Imagine a temporary tattoo with electronics embedded in it.
In 2011, UC San Diego bioengineer Todd Coleman developed some thin, flexible sensors that could measure electrical activity in the brain. That same year, his father died of pancreatic cancer. His grandmother died from stomach cancer years before. That got Coleman to thinking.
Are there electrical rhythms of the digestive system? Maybe we could try to measure them with these new devices, and maybe this could help solve some of the problems that have been associated with my family.
Researchers had used external sensors to measure electrical activity of the digestive tract before, but they failed to take one crucial factor into account.
Every person's stomach is in a slightly different location on their body, and people were not taking that into consideration in terms of where they place the electrodes. So if you're placing the electrodes far away from the stomach, it's not surprising if you don't pick up anything meaningful.
Coleman also discovered that the stomach's electrical signals are quite faint, about 10 times weaker than the heart's. So Coleman had to develop some extremely sensitive hardware. Coleman's team began testing a device in 2013. Their current version is a bit smaller than a cell phone. It uses 6 electrodes that are attached to different parts of the abdomen.
We know where my stomach is, and then we could place the other leads accordingly.
One of the first guinea pigs was postdoctoral fellow Armin Garabons. He tested the device on himself for more than a year.
And then you would just turn it on, and it starts recording locally onto a micro SD card. After about 24 hours, we could turn it off, take the data off, download it, and analyze it on the computer offline.
Garabon says interpreting the data is a challenge because the device picks up signals from the heart and respiratory system.
And you have to basically try to separate out only the stomach activity, and moreover do some new analysis to look at things like the spatial propagation and the frequency and the speed of that signal.
I'm really honestly hoping we can use this new technique.
Pediatric gastroenterologist Hayat Musa says the standard method of monitoring digestive activity relies on a long catheter that's inserted into the stomach.
To place those catheters, we have to put the patient, the pediatric patient, under anesthesia, and to place a stiff catheter through the nose or the mouth. It's not very comfortable for them when they wake up. And after we place it, we keep it for at least 8 to 10 hours.
Musa tested Coleman's device on 11 of her patients and said it performed as well as a catheter. Researchers can use data from the device to produce what's called a spatial histogram.
So this type of readout we think is something that's more valuable.
These show, for example, what fraction of the time waves in the stomach are moving toward the small intestine. In other words, it shows how often the stomach is working properly.
If you take a look at subject C here, notice that the waves are really propagating all over the place. They're equally likely to be propagating in any direction. And so for this subject, it's not surprising that they have a lot of nausea, because half the time is pushing in the opposite direction.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says in 2015, digestive problems prompted more than 32 million visits to the doctor. It turns out many digestive disorders have the same symptoms.
We're on a great path, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Coleman hopes to perfect his device so that one day it may be able to pinpoint the cause of a person's problems.
Stay tuned, there will be a sequel.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.